What did you want to be when you were 9 years old? Think about it. Really think. Before the world told you what was realistic. Before adults explained the difference between dreams and delusions. Before you learned to measure yourself against standards you did not create. What did you want to be? Now let me ask you something harder. What were you forced to be when you were 9 years old? What expectations were placed on your small shoulders before you were tall enough to carry them? What version of yourself were you required to perform before you knew who you actually were? Some of you are feeling something right now. A tightness in your chest. A memory surfacing that you thought you had buried. The echo of a childhood that was not entirely your own. Hold that feeling. Because the story I am about to tell you is about a 9-year-old boy who was already the best in his country. Already a national champion. Already carrying the dreams of 1 billion people on shoulders that had not yet finished growing. And about the man who saw him, really saw him, and asked a question that made an entire film crew freeze in silence. This story did not happen. I need to tell you that now, before we go any further. Bruce Lee died in July 1973. Jet Li, whose birth name is Lianjie, was born in April 1963. He was 10 years old when the dragon left this world. By every verifiable account, they never met. But here's what I know. In 1972, Jet Li was 9 years old and already a wushu prodigy. He had been training since age 8 at the Beijing Wushu Academy, one of the most demanding martial arts programs in the world. He was being shaped into a weapon of national pride, a symbol of Chinese excellence, a child whose body was not his own, but belonged to his coaches, his country, his future. And Bruce Lee, in 1972, was traveling through Asia, making films, meeting martial artists, searching for talent and truth wherever he could find them. Could their paths have crossed? There is no evidence, but there's also no evidence that they did not. And in the space between what we know and what we imagine, sometimes the most important stories are born. So come with me to Beijing, 1972. Come watch a 9-year-old boy perform perfection. And come see what happens when someone finally asks him if perfection is what he actually wants. The training hall was cold. This is what visitors always noticed first. Not the rows of children moving in perfect synchronization. Not the coaches with their sharp voices and sharper eyes. Not the smell of sweat and tiger balm and something harder to name. Something like fear dressed up as discipline. The cold. The Beijing Wushu Academy did not waste money on heating. Cold built character. Cold taught students that comfort was a luxury they had not earned. Cold reminded young bodies that the world was harsh and only the strong would survive. Li Lianjie did not feel the cold anymore. He had stopped feeling it 2 years ago, along with many other things. Hunger, exhaustion, the desire to play like other children, to run without purpose, to laugh without permission. These feelings have been trained out of him, replaced by something more useful, the ability to perform on command, to become his body completely, so completely that there was no room left for the child who lived inside it. He was 9 years old. He was the youngest national wushu champion in Chinese history, and he was so empty that he did not even know he was empty. He thought this was simply what life was. I need you to understand something about child prodigies. We see their achievements, and we call them gifted. We watch their performances, and we call them talented. We celebrate their success without asking what it cost them, without wondering what was sacrificed on the altar of their excellence. The truth is darker than the trophies suggest. To become exceptional at 9, you must give up being 9. You must trade childhood for training, play for practice, the chaos of growing up for the rigid discipline of getting better. You must become an adult before you have finished being a child. And something is lost in that trade, something that can never be fully recovered. Li Lianjie did not know what he had lost. He only knew that when he watched other children playing in the streets outside the academy, he felt something strange, a pulling sensation, a hunger for something he could not name. His coaches told him this feeling was weakness. They told him to push it down, to focus on his forms, to remember that he was special, and special people did not waste time on ordinary things. He believed them. What else could he do? He was 9 years old, and they were the only adults in his world. The day everything changed began like every other day. Wake before dawn, training until breakfast, training after breakfast, training through the morning and the afternoon and the evening until his body was so exhausted that sleep came instantly, dreamlessly, a brief death before the next day's resurrection. But today was different. Today, there was a visitor. The coaches had been preparing for this visit for weeks. An important man from Hong Kong, a famous martial artist, someone who might put the academy in a film, might bring international attention to the excellence they were cultivating. The students had been drilled on their best forms, their most impressive techniques, their most perfect performances. Lianjie had been chosen to demonstrate. Of course, he had been chosen. He was the best, the youngest champion, the pride of the program. When visitors came, he was what they were shown. He was the product that proved the factory worked. He stood in the center of the training hall, surrounded by his fellow students in their neat rows, waiting for the signal to begin. His body was perfectly still. His mind was perfectly empty. He was ready to perform. The visitor entered. He was smaller than Lianjie expected. The coaches had spoken of this man with such reverence that the boy had imagined a giant. Instead, he saw a compact figure in simple dark clothing, moving with an ease that seemed almost lazy compared to the rigid precision of the academy. But his eyes, the visitor's eyes, were not lazy at all. They swept across the room with an intensity that made Lianjie's stomach tighten. These were eyes that saw things that other adults missed. "This is Bruce Lee," the head coach announced, his voice carrying the barely concealed excitement of a man hoping to impress. "He has come to observe our training methods, to see what Chinese wushu can produce." Bruce Lee nodded politely, but said nothing. His eyes had found Lianjie in the center of the room, and something in his expression shifted. Not impressed exactly. Something more complicated. "This is Lianjie," the coach continued. 9 years old. National champion. The most gifted student we have ever trained. He will demonstrate the traditional forms for you. Bruce Lee walked closer to the boy, closer than visitors usually came. Close enough that Lianjie could see the texture of his skin, the small scar above his eyebrow, the depth of attention in his gaze. "Hello," Bruce said, and his voice was softer than the boy expected. Not the commanding tone of a coach. Something gentler. "Lianjie bua furmali. It is an honor to meet you, Sifu Li. The honor is mine." Bruce tilted his head slightly, studying the boy. "They tell me you are the best. The youngest champion. Very impressive for someone so young." "Thank you, Sifu. Are you ready to demonstrate?" "Yes, Sifu. I'm always ready." Something flickered in Bruce's eyes. A sadness so brief that Lianjie almost missed it. "Then please, show me what you can do." If you're already feeling something for this child, if you recognize something of yourself in his rigid readiness, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Because what happens next is the moment that could have changed everything. Lianjie began. His form was flawless. Every movement precisely where it should be, every transition smooth, every strike sharp. His body flowed through the traditional sequence with the mechanical perfection of a machine designed for exactly this purpose. The coaches watched with satisfied smiles. This was what they had created. This was their product, their proof, their justification for every harsh word and early morning and meal withheld. Bruce Lee watched with something else entirely. When the form was complete, Lianjie returned to his starting position and bowed. Applause came from the coaches, from the other students who had been trained to applaud on cue. But from Bruce Lee, there was only silence. The head coach stepped forward, uncertainty flickering across his face. "What do you think, Mr. Lee? Is he not remarkable? The precision, the technique, May I speak with him alone?" The question fell into the room like a stone into still water. The coaches exchanged glances. This was not part of the plan. Visitors observed, praised, perhaps offered partnerships or opportunities. They did not request private conversations with 9-year-old students. "Of course, Mr. Lee. We can arrange a meeting room." "Here's fine." Bruce gestured at the rows of students. "Perhaps I could take a break while I speak with young Lee." It was phrased as a suggestion, but something in Bruce's tone made it clear it was not really a suggestion at all. The head coach hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Students, 10-minute rest. Outside. Now. The hall emptied with military efficiency, students filing out in neat rows, coaches following with backward glances of curiosity and concern. Within moments, only Bruce Lee and Lianjie remained in the cold, empty space. The boy stood at attention, waiting for instruction. This was what he knew. Adults spoke, children obeyed. Whatever this famous visitor wanted, Lianjie would provide it. But Bruce Lee did not issue instructions. Instead, he sat down on the cold floor, crossing his legs casually, looking up at the standing boy with an expression that held no judgment, no expectation. "Sit with me," he said. Lianjie azitata. Students did not sit when adults were present. Students maintained their posture, demonstrated their discipline, proved that the training had taken hold. "It's okay," Bruce said gently. "Just sit, like we're friends talking." Friends. The word was almost foreign. Lianjie had training partners and competitors and coaches. He was not sure he had friends. He was not sure he knew what the word meant. But something in Bruce's voice made him want to try. He sat, carefully, formally, his back straight and his hands on his knees. Bruce smiled slightly. "You can relax. I promise I won't tell the coaches." Relax. Another foreign concept. But Lianjie tried. He let his shoulders drop slightly. Let his spine curl a little. It felt strange, like wearing clothes that did not fit. "How old are you?" Bruce asked. 9, Sifu. "And how long have you been training?" "Since I was 8. Almost 2 years now." Bruce nodded slowly. 2 years of training. And already a national champion. That is very impressive. "Thank you, Sifu. Can I ask you a question?" "A strange question." Lianjie nodded, uncertain what could be strange about a question. "When you were performing just now, that form, the one everyone clapped for, did you enjoy it?" The boy blinked. The question did not make sense. Enjoyment was not relevant to forms. Forms were performed correctly or incorrectly. Enjoyment was not part of the equation. I performed it correctly, Sifu. That's not what I asked." Bruce's voice remained gentle, but there was something underneath it now, an intensity that demanded honesty. "I asked if you enjoyed it. Did you feel joy while you were moving? Did you feel alive? Did you feel like a child playing or like a machine producing?" The questions hit something deep, something Lianjie had buried so thoroughly that he had forgotten it existed. He felt his throat tighten. His eyes began to sting. "I don't understand the question, Sifu." Bruce leaned forward slightly. "I think you do. I think you understand it perfectly. And I think the answer scares you." The silence that followed was unlike any silence Lianjie had experienced. It was not the silence of discipline, of waiting for instructions. It was a silence that seemed to be waiting for him, for something from inside him that he did not know how to give. "I don't feel anything," he finally whispered. "When I perform, I don't feel anything at all." The words came out before he could stop them, before he could remember that admitting such things was weakness, was failure, was everything his coaches had told him never to be. And then something worse happened. He started to cry. Not dramatically, not loudly, just tears sliding down his cheeks, dropping onto his training uniform, as if his body was releasing something it had been holding for years. He tried to stop. He had been taught to stop. Crying was weakness. Crying was undisciplined. Crying was... "It's okay," Bruce said softly. "Let it come." Lianjie could not have stopped even if he wanted to. The tears came from somewhere deeper than discipline could reach, from a child who had been buried under all the training and the pressure and the expectations, from a 9-year-old who had never been allowed to be 9. Bruce did not move to comfort him, did not pat his shoulder or offer empty reassurances. He simply sat, present, witnessing, allowing the boy to feel whatever needed to be felt. When the tears finally slowed, Lianjie felt something strange. Lighter, emptier, but in a different way than usual, as if something toxic had been released. "I'm sorry, Sifu," he whispered. "I don't know what." "Never apologize for feeling," Bruce said firmly. "Never. The people who taught you that tears are weakness lied to you. Tears are honesty. Tears are the body's way of telling the truth when the mind has forgotten how." He reached out and lifted Lianjie's chin, gently, so their eyes met. Let me tell you what I saw when you performed that form. I saw perfection. Every movement exactly where it should be. Every transition flawless. Your coaches have created something technically magnificent. Lianjie felt a flicker of pride, the conditioned response to praise. But I also saw something else, Bruce continued. I saw a boy who was not there. A body moving through space without a soul inside it. I saw a child who has been trained so thoroughly that he has forgotten he is a child. Who performs martial arts, but does not practice them. Who moves, but does not live. The words should have hurt. They should have felt like criticism, like failure, like everything Lianjie had been taught to fear. But somehow they did not hurt. They felt like relief. Like someone finally saying out loud what he had been feeling, but could not name. Martial arts are not about perfection, Bruce said. They are about expression, about the joy of movement, the pleasure of feeling your body do what it was designed to do. When I watch you, I see no joy. I see only duty. And duty without joy is a kind of death. He stood and offered his hand to help Lianjie up. The boy took it, and something passed between them in that touch. Something that felt like permission. Can I show you something? Bruce asked. Lianjie nudda. Bruce stepped back and settled into a stance. But it was not a stance Lianjie recognized from any form, any style, any tradition. It was something more natural, more relaxed, more alive. And then Bruce Lee began to move. What followed was unlike anything Lianjie had ever seen. Not the mechanical precision of wushu. Not the rigid perfection of traditional forms. Something else entirely. Bruce moved as if his body was having a conversation with the air, as if each gesture was a question and each step was an answer. There was technique, yes, stunning technique that Lianjie could barely process. But there was something more. There was joy. Unmistakable, undeniable joy. A man doing exactly what he was born to do and loving every moment of it. When Bruce stopped, he was smiling. Not performing a smile. Actually smiling. The expression of a child who has been allowed to play. Did you see the difference? Bruce asked. Lianjie nudda slowly. You were happy. I was present. I was inside each moment instead of rushing to the next one. I was not trying to be perfect. I was trying to be alive. He knelt down, so he was at the boy's eye level. This is what martial arts should feel like. Not a prison. Not a duty. A game. A dance. A celebration of having a body that can move. He placed his hands on Lianjie's shoulders, and his voice became very serious. You have been trained by people who care about results. About championships. About making China proud. These are not bad things. But they have forgotten something important. They have forgotten that you are a child. That you need to play. That the joy they are crushing out of you is the very thing that can make you truly great instead of merely perfect. Lianjie felt something stirring in his chest. Something he had not felt in so long that he had forgotten its name. Hope. What do I do, Sifu? How do I find the joy again? They will never let me train differently. They will never. They do not need to know. Bruce smiled conspiratorially. The joy is not in how you train. It is in how you experience the training. You can perform the same forms, follow the same discipline, meet the same expectations. But inside, in the secret place where no one can see, you can choose to be present. You can choose to feel each movement instead of just executing it. You can choose to be a boy playing instead of a machine producing. He leaned closer, and his voice dropped to almost a whisper. Can you keep a secret? Lianjie nudda eajarli. The greatest martial artists in history were not the most perfect. They were the most alive. They did not fight to win. They fought because fighting made them feel like themselves. They did not train to achieve. They trained because training was its own reward. He tapped the boy's chest gently. Find that feeling. Protect it. Never let anyone take it from you. No matter how many championships they offer, no matter how much praise they give. The feeling is worth more than all of it. If this moment is touching something in you, if you are remembering your own lost joy or your own stolen childhood, then please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Because what happens next is why this story matters. The doors of the training hall opened. The coaches were returning, the 10-minute break over, the machinery of the academy grinding back into motion. Bruce stood quickly, and his demeanor shifted. He became the visiting dignitary again, the famous martial artist here to observe and perhaps to offer opportunities. But his eyes found Lianjie one last time, and in that glance was everything they had shared. "Your demonstration was remarkable," Bruce said loudly, for the coaches to hear. "This young man has a great future ahead of him." The head coach beamed. "Thank you, Mr. Li. We are very proud of him." "You should be. But may I offer one small suggestion?" The coach's smile faltered slightly. Suggestions from visitors could be complicated, but refusing Bruce Lee was not an option. "Of course, Mr. Lee. Let him play sometimes. Let him run without purpose. Let him be a child, even if just for an hour a week. The technique will not suffer. In fact, it may flourish in ways you cannot predict." The coach's face tightened. "We have a program, Mr. Lee. A system that produces results. Playing is not. Consider it." Bruce's voice carried a quiet authority that silenced the objection. "I have seen many martial artists in my life. The ones who burn out are the ones who are never allowed to burn at all. The ones who become legends are the ones who never lose their joy." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Thank you for your hospitality. I have seen something remarkable today. Not just technique, something rarer. Something that deserves to be protected." His eyes found Lianjie one last time. And then Bruce Lee walked out of the Beijing Wushu Academy into the winter cold, leaving behind a 9-year-old boy who was, for the first time in 2 years, beginning to remember what it felt like to be alive. The coaches did not follow Bruce's suggestion. Of course they did not. They had a system. They had results. They had no interest in the intangible nonsense of joy and play. But something had changed in Lianjie. Something small and secret, hidden in the place where no one could see. He began to experience his training differently. Not the movements. Those remained as rigorous as ever. But something inside them. A tiny flame of presence that the coaches could not detect and therefore could not extinguish. He started to feel his forms instead of just performing them. He started to notice the way his body moved through space. The pleasure of muscles working in harmony, the simple joy of being physical. He kept this feeling hidden, protected, exactly as Bruce Lee had instructed. And something strange happened. He got better, not by the metrics the coaches used. His forms remained technically perfect. His championships continued. But there was something else now, something that audiences could sense even if they could not name it. A quality of presence that made people watch him differently. A sense that the boy performing was actually there, actually alive, actually experiencing what he was doing. The coaches noticed without understanding. They attributed it to their methods, their discipline, their genius training program. They had no idea that a visitor had planted a seed that was quietly growing in the secret garden of their star student's heart. Bruce Lee died the following year. Lianjie heard the news in the training hall, announced by coaches who seemed unaffected, who quickly returned to the day's regimen. But that night, in his dormitory bed, the boy who had become Jet Li allowed himself to cry again. Not tears of grief exactly, tears of gratitude, for a man who had seen him when no one else had, who had given him a gift that no championship could match. The decades that followed are the ones the world knows. Lianjie became Jet Li, the greatest wushu artist of his generation. A film star whose movements on screen carried something that other martial artists could not replicate. Critics called it grace. Audiences called it magic. He knew what it actually was. Joy. The secret that Bruce Lee had taught him in a cold training hall in Beijing. The flame he had protected through years of pressure and expectation and international fame. The child inside the champion who had never stopped playing, even when playing was forbidden. In interviews, Jet Li sometimes speaks about the spiritual aspects of martial arts, about presence and awareness, and the importance of joy in practice. Interviewers assume he developed these philosophies over time, through experience and reflection. He never corrects them. He never tells them about the afternoon when a visitor asked a question that made a 9-year-old boy cry. He never reveals that everything he believes about martial arts can be traced back to a single conversation that lasted less than 15 minutes. Some gifts are too sacred to share. Some teachers are too important to name. Some moments live in the private chambers of the heart, where they glow quietly, illuminating everything that follows without ever being seen. But now, you know the story that Jet Li has kept secret for 50 years. You know about the day when Bruce Lee walked into a factory that made champions and saw a child who needed permission to be a child. You know about the question that made an entire crew freeze and the answer that made a 9-year-old weep. And maybe, if you're lucky, you know something about yourself too. About the joy you lost somewhere along the way. About the child inside you who was trained to perform instead of allowed to play. About the secret garden where something might still be growing if you have the courage to look. I want to leave you with the question that Bruce Lee asked Lianjie. When you do the thing you are good at, the thing that others praise you for, the thing that has become your identity, do you enjoy it? Do you feel joy while you are doing it? Or do you feel like a machine producing what is expected? If the answer is not joy, then something has been stolen from you. Something that Bruce Lee spent his life trying to protect in himself and in others. Something that the world is very good at taking and very bad at giving back. But here is what I believe. The joy is not gone. It is not dead. It is only buried. Hidden in the secret place where you put it when you learned that joy was not productive, not efficient, not what adults wanted from you. It is waiting for you to remember. Find it. Protect it. Never let anyone take it from you. No matter how many achievements they offer, no matter how much success they promise. The feeling is worth more than all of it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to a story about a child who was taught to be a machine and a man who reminded him he was human. If this touched something in you, please subscribe. Not for our numbers. For more conversations like this one. For more stories that ask the questions we have forgotten how to ask ourselves. And please, whatever you do today, find one moment to play. To move without purpose. To feel your body doing what bodies are designed to do. Be a child again, even if just for a moment. It is never too late.